welcome back to another episode of On Campus here on the Solano College Sports Network. I'm your host today, Brooklyn Gonzales, and today we are joined by our very special guest, Dean of Career and Technical Education, Jose Cortes. So welcome to the studio.
Hi, thanks for having me.
So why don't we just start off by you just telling us a little bit about your educational background? I know you were a previous student here at
hmm
Solano, so what did that kind of look like?
Yeah, so I started at Solano a year after I graduated high school.
Mhm.
I started here, I kind of came to the campus feeling a little bit disconnected from academia, to be honest. I had a difficult time in high school. I graduated late. I never really felt like connected to school or like I was particularly good at it. And when I started here at Solano, I started to have kind of the same experience because I brought some of those same feelings with me my very first couple semesters. So I
Yeah,
took some classes the first semester. I didn't do too well. I took some classes the second semester, same thing. My first year at Solano, I was placed on academic probation. And then I decided, I need to take a little bit of a break, try to, work for a while, see if what kind of things I need to kind of prioritize in my life and what kind of
right.
things I know that I want to do.
Mhm.
And then I came back to Solano. And when I came back to Solano the second time, a few years later, it was a completely different experience. I started actually took Com 1 with Professor Poff. I took an English class, and like those two classes were kind of like flipping a light switch on for me, right? So like I knew that I wanted to teach or work in education, and I kept taking more comm classes and more English classes,
Mhm.
and just decided that I had like a passion for like writing, and like creating arguments and studying, communications and stuff like that. And I knew that I wanted to move in that capacity. So after a handful of years, I transferred. I went to Chico State where I got a bachelor's in English with a focus on education. And then after that, I came back here. I worked for a number of years in an English lab we used to have on campus. And that was really important to me because when I was a student here, I was placed into remedial math and remedial English, which we don't have those classes anymore,
Yeah.
but it was a few levels below being able to take transfer level English. And so when we had that lab, I got to work with students who were in a similar situation to me. So that was really
Yeah.
important. And I did that for like 8 or so years, but then I wanted to move to the classroom. So while I was working, I was really supported by like my administrators, the other staff that I worked with, and I was able to go to graduate school while still working in the lab full time. And then after a few years and I finished my master's, I got a job working as full time faculty. And so I did that for 8 or 9 years, and then got another kind of itch to go back to school and kind of move into the administration world. And I'm currently in the process of finishing up my doctorate from UC Davis and doing
Wow.
educational leadership. And part of the experiences that I had as a student here, as staff here, as faculty here, and now as administration here, just like really solidified like my genuine love for the community college system and wanting to know that I want to be able to work in this system in a different capacity.
Wow, yeah. So you just experienced the full circle moment of coming back,
Yeah.
where you started out as. I kind of want to go back to you said that you kind of had like a rocky,
Yeah.
tough start, but then obviously you made it work and you found that success. So what was like kind of the switch or like the different when you came back the second time? What was
Yeah.
different that
I think it was like finding a feeling of belonging. That's
time?
something that
Okay,
really felt
yeah,
important to me. And also feeling like, the first handful of semesters, part of it was on me. Like I was trying to like, I came to school with some of the similar friends that I had from high school, right? I was kind of like, recreating some of the same behaviors. If the weather was nice and friends wanted to go out and have lunch, I would leave campus. So like, I take ownership of a lot of that kind of stuff in retrospect.
yeah,
But also like, I legitimately struggled, right? Like I took a math class that was a little bit too tough for me without feeling like I was able to, kind of get the support of taking a couple levels below of that class. My very first semester, I signed up for another forgot what the class was. It might have been a history class, and like I struggled to be able to write an academic paper or to read a textbook. And so I think that like the second time through, I had some different people that like I kind of connected with. We started utilizing more services, kind of like some tutoring that was on campus. We sat in a library and studied with each other. I had an instructor who really emphasized the importance of me going to their office hours, and I started doing that. And I think also like, there was just some stuff of like experiencing a job that I didn't love that I worked for a number of years, and then starting to see, you know, how that was kind of affecting things with like my family, right? Like my parents, neither one of them had the opportunity to kind of go to traditional school. My dad immigrated here from Mexico when he was really, really young. So he has the equivalent of like a third grade education. And my mom had me when she was a young teenager. So she wasn't able to finish high school in the traditional sense. And so kind of like I was seeing that like disappointment, for lack of a better word, from my
yeah,
family. And I was like, okay, I need to kind of try to do something to feel like I owe that to them. And so like I think all of those things culminated together, but at the core of it was like the time felt right, and then also the support system was there in front of me, and I got to that point where like I felt like I belonged here. I started to find that identity as a college student, and I
Mhm.
think a lot of it was just from the people that I became friends with in my classes, taking classes from instructors who were really supportive, and just like trying to, as much as I could, like fully immerse myself in Solano College.
Yeah, and sometimes people just like need like some extra time or
Yeah,
some support, and that's just like super important. Sometimes I feel like I'm that way, like I just need that push from
yeah,
like
that's exactly what it
people.
was. Yeah.
So it's really nice that you were able to like find that here. If you could go back to like your younger self or
Mhm.
anybody who was like in your shoes, like what advice would you give to them who are kind of like struggling and like trying to get their foot into like college and all that?
Yeah, I would say like look for community. And part of that is that like, that also needs to be on us as an institution is to help people find that community, right? And help be able to cultivate that sense of belonging for people. But like finding your team, right? And sometimes your team is people who are here that are on campus. It can be friends that you make in a class. It can be instructors that you have on campus. It could be someone in the academic success and tutoring center or, a number of different support systems that we have on campus, but it could also be like finding your team outside of the college as well, right? So like, having family that supported me. So it was like a job that supported me that was willing to like let me, work fewer hours if I had tests to study for, or like, parents that help support me academically, even though they weren't able to like help me with homework or things like that. There was still that kind of like how's school going, that
Yeah,
we're proud of you piece as you're working through it. But I think that would be the biggest thing is like trying to anchor yourself, because I think whether it's something that's like locally within like family or friends, but then also like knowing that colleges have resources, right? And
hmm,
then knowing that like if you're on campus, for me, the big thing was like staying on campus more, right? And like when
great.
I would like leave, that's where I would be disconnected. But if I would just stay and say, hey, today I have to work on a paper, I'm going to sit in the library and work on it, or I'm going to go to the English lab and I'm going to sit down and work on it. And so I think that that was one of those areas where I feel like I really found my footing because I felt like I belonged because I was here,
Yeah,
right? And so I think that like that's one of those things that and there's no one right or wrong way to feel like you belong, but for me mine was like just like being present on campus, but then
hmm,
also not being afraid to lean into people to say, hey, here's a place where I need support. And even now, like when I look at the people who were instrumental on like contributing to me going to school, like I think back to some of the faculty that I had when I was here. Like I said, like working with Professor Poff now, even, I see him on campus and, we were colleagues when I was faculty, and same thing working on campus now. And there's always that like tremendous level of respect that I have for him. Another
yeah,
person who was my colleague in English, his name was Mr. Clark, who taught here, when we were colleagues teaching together, I couldn't call him by his first name. And it's like as much as like my family was instrumental in me going to school, like faculty like that were instrumental. And so I think that like just knowing that there's people here that will support you and that there's relationships you can build with people here that will last a long time and will have an impact on you larger than you think they will at the time is really, really important.
yeah. No, I can definitely see that from my experience personally.
Yeah.
So, circling back to your kind of role as dean, is
Mhm.
that like your goal for the CTE program and other programs here, like just being having these programs for students to be successful? Like, what is your goal for them?
Yeah. So, I mean, I think CTE programs are, similar to a lot of the programs that we offer on campus. Like, I mean, these ones specifically are defined by like being able to create career opportunities for students, right?
Right,
So,
right.
what I really like about the role in CTE is it becomes less of a question of like, what is it you want to study, and more of a question of what is it that you want to do,
Hmm.
right? And then, like, everything that we're doing, the courses that we're offering, the curriculum that we're utilizing, the materials that students have in spaces like this are all centered on the idea of like, here's what you'll be interacting with when you move into industry. And
Hmm.
so I think that that's really cool because it kind of changes the narrative. It's like I approached an academic program like majoring in English, but I approached it from like a very um, kind of career mindset. It's like I knew that I wanted to teach. Majoring in English was just the medium to get me there to be able to teach. I knew that I wanted to work in academia. And even now, knowing that I want to work in administration within a community college system, like the program that I'm in right now, I'm in it because I know that it's going to make me better at my job and present opportunities for my career as well, right? And so I think that like that's what I really like about the career technical education world is one, it really gets people focused on the things that they're interested in and wanting to do. I think that when that happens, I mean, you see students like you, like other students in this space, like other students across our CTE programs who are like invigorated by these programs, like, and that's where that sense of belonging really ties in, because it's all about
Yeah.
like you're here because you're doing the exact thing that you want to do, right? And I recognize that, like, working with students and be like, I was teaching English and someone's like, well, I'm taking your English class because I have to, but I'm like, okay, well, how can I help this become relevant for what you want to study? And then the other thing that I really like about the CTE programs is it really gets the opportunity to kind of like redefine what it means to be a college going student, right? So it's like college doesn't necessarily have to mean, and not there's anything wrong with it being some of these like academic programs, right? But then also like we have students who are interested in welding, we have students who are interested in auto tech, cosmetology, right? And it's like being able to create this environment, going back to that feeling of belonging, where students who come on campus can find a space of belonging in whatever those interests are. And there's not like this kind of tiered system between here's academic programs and here's CTE programs, but really like here are programs that we offer that yield really strong opportunities. Some of those are direct to jobs, some of those are 4-year opportunities, some of those are degrees, some of those are certificates, but that like really help foster that curiosity and interest that students have in career opportunities.
Yeah, it's great that there's such like a broad,
Mm-hmm.
scheme of things that people can choose from and just like find their path
Yeah,
through,
exactly.
trial and error, whether that may be. Because I know like last semester I was pre-med, so I just like having this opportunity to like
Mm-hmm.
really find out what I really want to do is like really been helpful. But I kind of want to circle back to your role as English professor here
Mm-hmm.
at Solano. Do you miss teaching, the
I
teaching
do.
aspect side of
Yeah.
things? Why?
I mean, just like interaction with students, I
Yeah.
think is one of my absolute favorite things. I love the community element of teaching. I think it's like it's really, I don't know, it's just like a privilege to be part of somebody's journey,
Yeah.
right? And I get that now in the capacity that I'm in, but like there's not a classroom that I walk by and that I don't look in it and I'm kind of like, what's going on in there? Like I'd like to go in, I walk by a dry erase board. I'm like, let me get up there and talk a little bit, right? And it's like, but I think like that sense of community that you get in the classroom, like one of my favorite things about teaching, and I used to teach English classes and then English as a second language classes, was like people come into a classroom, into a space, and a lot of times, especially in writing, like I would get students to be like, I'm not good at writing because I internalized that a long time ago in school. Right. And
Mhm.
I was one of those students as well who was always like, I'm not a math person, I'm not an English person, right? Like it's a very common feeling among people, but like you get a group of people in a room together, and at the beginning, it's a bunch of strangers and you're kind of feeling each other out. But by the end, like you really cultivate like a sense of community.
Yeah.
And like that was one of the things that I really miss about it. And then, I also like really miss all like the kind of like one-on-one type relationships that you get with students along the way. I mean, I still get those in the capacity that I'm in right now, but I also think that was a good sign. Like I never wanted to feel like if I moved into an administrative role, it was because I was like done with the classroom. Like
Yeah.
I very much so miss every day teaching in the classroom, but I think that's kind of a good sign for me to move into administration, because I have like there's a genuine care and like a genuine love for what I did when I was in the classroom, and I bring that with me to the job that I do now. And so I feel like that's one of those things that like it's not like it has to be there, but I feel like it makes me personally feel more effective at my job.
Yeah, for sure. What does a day to day look like for you? Like
Yeah. It
daily.
varies significantly. That's another one of the things that I like. And I think that's one of the things that can feel a little bit I don't know, at first felt a little bit uncomfortable about the administrative job versus the faculty job. Is the
Yeah.
faculty job is like there's a lot of prep that goes into it, right? So it's like, you know, I know what my lessons are going to be. I know where we're going to be in week 4. I know where we're going to be in weeks, 16. I know what's happening on Tuesday. I know what's happening sometimes even by the minute. I have it planned out. And there's a lot of premeditation that goes into that.
Yeah.
In the administrative role, some days you have a plan on what things are that you're going to do, and some days you get to all of those things, and some days you get to none of those things, right? And so I mean, I think it really depends. I mean, some of the things that I do regularly that are part of like my everyday job is like, a lot of the stuff for career technical education programs across the campus. Our office does a lot of the purchasing. We oversee some big grants. They're called Strong Workforce and Perkins, which are used to be able to buy things like the cameras in the studio space, right? The mixing board, stuff like that.
Well,
So
thanks
part
for
of the stuff is like, yeah, part of the stuff is really cool because we get to do like the purchasing and get to
yeah.
see spaces like this come to fruition. Some of the other stuff that we do is like, just work with students. If students have concerns or things they want to address in their classes or have questions about like what courses we're going to be scheduling, those are things that we do. building the schedules for the classes, working with faculty to think about what courses are going to be offered when, doing a lot of like hiring. It's kind of been a busy hiring season, which is really awesome because we get to add some new staff and faculty into our program. So that's been really cool. And that's kind of part of the job. And then, kind of like answering a lot of emails, a lot more emails than I had before. But I think,
Yeah.
it just really ranges, and then kind of everything in between. So right now it's a busy, there's a bunch of graduation and celebration ceremonies happening on campus. So partaking in all of that, helping coordinate those, there's a late night study session, and next Tuesday we'll be making pancakes for students outside of the library in the evening with me and one of my other friends who's the dean of liberal arts, Neil Glines. And so it just, that's the part about the job that I think is exciting, is there's a lot of pivoting, right?
Yeah.
There's a lot of, conversations about like things that are like institutional leadership stuff and kind of like where we're headed, and having the opportunity to partake in those conversations. But there's a lot of kind of like little local things and trying to collaborate across campus with other groups to just help drive programs.
Yeah.
So it really varies, but I think at the core of every day is like emails, purchases, right? Like, stuff like that.
Yeah. And then finally, what would you say has been your favorite role in your career so far?
I don't know. I mean, I really,
You don't have to
really
have
like
one.
this job. I think they're all. It's kind of like, well, which one of your kids do you love
Yeah,
more?
yeah,
Like, I love them all, right? Like, but
yeah.
like, no, I like, or both of them. It all sounded like a million, but like, I love both of them, right? But like, I think the working in the English lab was that has a really special place for me, because I think that's where like I I felt like I realized that I was well suited to work in a college. That's where
Mhm.
I started to get to interact with students in a different way. It's where I kind of found my footing. It's where I started building a lot of relationships with people that I still have relationships with now on campus.
Right.
And that was where I felt like the most immediate. It felt very surreal when I went into that job, because like I worked one on one with students in an English lab, and I was like a handful of semesters ago, like I was in the same English lab. And so like that was kind of like my first job out of college, and I think that's probably one of the ones that I hold like the most near and dear to me, is that time that I was staff, just because like it was all one-on-one interaction with students, and it was all working with students who were in a space where they were like, I feel like I'm having a hard time with this material. And that was the moment where I was like, hey, not too long ago I was in this class as well. Here's the way that I felt, but let's kind of work through this together. And in fact, like there's a student that I had one of my first semesters, and he was enrolled in like several ESL classes, and then enrolled in several remedial English classes. And I just had a conversation with him, a handful of months ago, and he's now an ESL instructor and has his master's degree. And it makes me one feel
Wow.
old that I was like, hey, we worked together for a really long time.
Yeah.
But it was just super cool to just know that like I still have some of those connections with people from a time where I got to know somebody really well, because we just sat down with each other like this and just worked on writing. And
Yeah.
so like I think that's one of my like favorite experiences. But I've been fortunate where like every experience that I've had has all been at Solano College. So it just feels like they're all me working at Solano with just kind of different hats along the way.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for joining us
Of
and
course, yeah.
sharing
Thank you
your
for the time.
journey and telling us a little bit more about the CTE program. So, thank you guys so much for joining us on this episode of On Campus here on the Solano College Sports Network. I am your host today, Brooklyn Gonzales, and we were joined by Jose Cortes, the Dean of Career and Technical Education. We will see you in the next episode.
Thanks.
If you are interested in a career in sports broadcasting,
Whether you're commentating a live game
or hosting your own TV show,
For more information, contact Greg Poff. That's me at solano.edu.
we hope to see you here next semester. And remember,
It's more than just sports, it's an education.